And so you have to make up for that lack of popularity with better marketing and, of
Mm-hmm.
course, an amazing classroom. But what you have to be is genuine.
Welcome to the Satori Lifestyle Satori Masters podcast, the ultimate resource for ambitious, hardworking school owners that want to get their business and their life to the next level. My name is Dave Kovar. I'm a lifetime martial artist, business owner, speaker, and author. My goal is to empower listeners with the knowledge and the tools they need to break through barriers and really get their business and their life to the next level. Thanks for watching and enjoy. Welcome to the Satori Lifestyle Satori Masters podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kovar, and with me today is my good friend, Dan Vigil. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Dan and I have known each other for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. Does that sound about right? Maybe longer?
More than 20.
Okay. Man, we're old. And he used to run a martial arts school in outside of Detroit, and then he sold it a few years back and moved to Denver, and now you have a music school called Songbirds. Is that correct?
You know what? Not Songbird, but yes, I'm teaching music.
Okay, well, kind of give me your background. I know you were a high-level Olympic Taekwondo practitioner at one point in your career. Just take me through your history a little bit.
Yeah. So, what's interesting in hindsight is I was 7 years old when I started, so about first grade when I started in martial arts, and I used to. I'm like of the Karate Kid era. So I used to watch Karate Kid and I would punch pillows and what you once called karate Tourette's.
Yeah.
I had Taekwondo Tourette's. It's an affliction, but
It's
I was
real.
doing.
It is real.
I still have it, by the way. You're never cured. So I was doing that, and my mom had this old guitar, and I would just grab it, and it wasn't in tune, and neither was I, and I would beat the crap out of that the same way I sort of treated the pillows in the house, like a lot of enthusiasm, no expertise.
Got
So
it.
this is 1986-ish, and I went to my mom. We were not a rich family, and I said, Mom, I want to do karate, and I want to take guitar lessons. And as any mother in 1986 would say, she said, you got to pick one. And I said, my reasoning was, well, if I get beat up on the way to my guitar lesson, what good is the guitar lesson? So I went in and started in Kempo Karate, 1987, very early in the year. So one thing led to another. I started there, Rising Sun Martial Arts in Hudson, Massachusetts. Sensei Doug McDonald, as far as I know, still there. And went from there to, we moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I started with Han Lee. Happened to have his school. Han Lee was our first Olympic team coach, I believe. 88 bronze medalist in Taekwondo. And so I started with him. His school was like 2 miles from my house when we moved.
Okay.
By luck. And then he went off to do, more stuff with the Olympic team. Angel Aranzamendi took over for him. National Taekwondo player, still very involved today. Lives not far from me. By the way, I live like 2 miles from Han Lee's school in Colorado.
That's
so
funny.
I could not get rid of that guy. So I'm in training with him. He left. Jaeyoung Kim came, so I got the Korean Taekwondo experience, and I eventually hooked up with Juan Moreno, who was our Olympic team coach more recently, and did the peak team thing with him and some of his assistant coaches. Then, like somewhere around 2002, I started training with Mati Jadapitak in Michigan. 200 Muay Thai fights. He won 150 of them. Two-time Lampani belt holder. Just amazing martial artist. From him, I started hanging around jiu-jitsu guys, and then to Amal Easton. And I got my blue belt. I was a blue belt for a long time in jiu-jitsu. I was one of those guys. like the perpetual blue belt,
I got you.
and won a couple American nationals in the masters division, and like did okay. So I was kind of truthfully, a guy with a lot of potential in martial arts, never on the A level. Never had the right coaches in the wrong body, and the wrong body and the right body and the wrong coaches, and just never lined it up.
So, you know what, I competed from the early 70s to the late 80s, and mostly point karate. And I remember I was a good regional competitor, but I remember telling my friend, I was never going to be, world champion. I could hang with those guys, but I was never going to be. But I knew I could have a world champion martial arts school. I remember he reminded me about that later on. It was like, okay, but I'm a world champion in loving martial arts. How's that? That's when I'm a world champion.
You're the best at that.
So you opened up a school in Michigan. What year when you opened your first taekwondo school, your martial arts school?
2004. Yep.
Okay. Okay, very cool. And then you had like a rocking. And by the way, your building, I'd been there a few times. It was actually in the original Ford building, right? It was like Henry Ford's original office building. Was that right?
He had an office there, so it's Henry Ford's valve plant.
Got it.
And we were in the basement, and he was friends with Steve Forbes, Forbes magazine fame, and he let Steve Forbes keep his motorcycles in the basement there, and they leaked on the ground, on the floor, put oil stains on the floor, and that's where my office was, right on top of Steve Forbes oil stains. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. So what I want, you sold the school to Master Paul Rose. Is still rocking. The school's doing great still.
My best friend in the whole world.
Yeah, one of my guys was just out there a couple months ago doing some, testing with some of his guys. What a good guy he is. And you moved to Colorado, and eventually, I guess what I want to cut to the chase, is that you at some point decided, you know what, I'm going to try music school. And I'm paraphrasing a bit, but you thought, hey man, I can apply some of the same concepts that I was teaching in martial arts to music, and that's kind of where I want to go with this. So the parallels, what have you learned? Two things: what can music teachers learn from martial arts schools, and what can martial arts schools learn from what you found out, teaching music?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a great judge of how wise my wisdom is. But I would start from the premise that the same metric makes both businesses work.
Okay.
So like at the Mr. Chamberlain level, right? We have enrollment, right? The number. Let me turn off that alert real quick. So then we have the number of people that we're enrolling in a month.
Okay.
We have the amount that we're charging them, and we have how long they're staying, our retention. So it is exactly the same in music as in martial arts, and I think that it does us a lot of good to remember that the core of the business is those three things. Any problem that we're having is a problem in one or more of those three areas, and there is no success in any lesson business, martial arts, music, or otherwise, if all three of those areas don't fire properly. Now, the most important thing in a martial arts school, and you may have said this once or a million times, you got to teach good classes.
Right.
The same is true in music. And I think so often both martial arts schools, music schools, probably dance schools, and they look for a silver bullet in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook ad. The number of people who have said like, oh, I teach great classes, our school's awesome, if I could just get the word out. And I kind of cringe a little bit, and I'm like, hey, if you were really teaching great classes, the word would get out. Or at least you've been open for 10 years, you probably have more than 40 people. Some of them would have stuck around. Possibly the classroom's not that great.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this, but people just tell me how to get more members, and the bottom line is that it's great to have more members, but as Stephen Covey said, you can't talk yourself out of a situation you behaved yourself into. And if your program is only mediocre, nothing else matters, man. It's always the place to go. And I've been doing a thing lately where when I'm talking to school owners, I have them rate their classrooms over the course of the week, and not just the ones you taught. Let's say you have 30 classes this week, right?
Yeah.
Give yourself a score overall. Put them all together. Is it A plus, A minus, B? Where are we? And it's kind of like if it's anything less than a A minus, why, because B classes don't keep members. Yeah, that
Nope.
means it's a pretty good program. And in a different environment, maybe you can run a business with that way. But it's pretty competitive. There's a lot of things people can do with their time, and money. And if your program isn't rock solid, that's just always got to be the starting point.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Let me ask you that: how would you rate the honesty of martial arts instructors rating their classroom?
Honestly, probably they most of them, and my network, I'd like to think the people that we work with are pretty
Better than
good
average.
people. Yeah, so I think they would be more honest than maybe the industry as a whole. But certainly that's an issue. To your point, I'm not trying to make anybody look bad. Most people think their program is a lot better than it really is. And what's interesting is that how often, and who am I to tell anybody else what they should be teaching their students? That's your business. But how often people are teaching stuff that is not necessary, outdated, impractical. And hey, man, I'm all about tradition and pretty movement. There's nothing wrong with that. But some people, it's like martial arts has improved. There's so much good material out there. There's really you can't. You got to listen to the industry to know what that they're looking for. People are looking for versus
Yeah.
you telling them what you think they should learn.
Right. I think that's a very good point. And if you think about my time in martial arts, stepped on the mat in 1987 and then retired in 2017. So I was, like that was an era of a lot of change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of stepped out. I feel like just at the time when you probably couldn't get away with the traditional, outdated is how I'd like to describe it. Like you couldn't do that anymore and really be successful. Just in the town I had my last martial arts school in, the karate guy had 100 people, the jiu-jitsu school had 400 people.
Yep.
And it's not that you can't run a successful karate school. I think you just need to acknowledge what's changed.
Yeah, yeah, and by the way, what I see across the country in my travels is I don't see as big of a comparison to style and number of students. I see a lot of martial arts, taekwondo, karate guys still with really big active counts, but where I do see the difference is in the adult population. Then very rarely do you find, and they're out there, and I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with teaching. I mean, good traditional karate is beautiful, man, and I appreciate and respect it wholeheartedly. It's just that that's not where most adults are going now. If you look at the places that are packed with adults, and there are exceptions. I know some exceptions. It's Muay Thai schools and jiu-jitsu schools. That's really what you see. And I think part of it is because a lot of times in traditional martial arts, there's so much memorization you have to do. You have to remember this form, you have to do this, that it's like kind of like there's homework that goes along with it. And if you're going to a jiu-jitsu school, Muay Thai, you're just going in there, you're getting your workout, and you're able to kind of get away from that, so to speak.
Yeah. So this might be my only good point, but here's a parallel between something that both musicians and martial artists, I think, screw up. And I once got kicked out of a dojo for saying screwed up, so maybe I should take that back.
That's all right.
So I think that you can absolutely have a successful, very traditional karate school or judo or whatever your bag is in today's martial arts world. I think that it is less popular. And so you have to make up for that lack of popularity with better marketing and, of course, an amazing classroom. But what you have to be is genuine. So what I see a lot of people do is try to say that their traditional karate is every bit as effective as anything else in the cage in the UFC, or that this traditional karate is like the most proven form of self-defense or something like this, right? Which is a dubious claim nowadays. And I think that the individuals in the market pick up on that disingenuous statement. And I think that those folks, by the way, this happens in music where it's like there's a thing like I play one kind of guitar, but it doesn't matter what you come to me and say you want to learn. You're like, oh, I want to learn to shred metal, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool. I got you. Come on, and like, yeah, we'll teach you that. But I play country guitar,
Got it.
like that happens all the time. And this is an old adage, like you can't be all things to all people.
Right, right.
And so, I think the move for those guys who do something that's a little less popular right now is to figure out what's unique and great in what they do and figure out who the person is that really likes that and benefits from that, and then figure out the media by which to reach that individual, and then do something that's genuine for you, teach what's in your heart to teach, and be successful because you found the right people.
I love it. I love it. It's because the worst thing you can do is not believe in the program you're teaching. You see the trend, and we've seen it. You've been in the industry forever. Someone goes, "Oh, I guess we got to do." Taibo was so big in the late '90s.
Yeah.
Everybody had to do it, and
I
a lot
met
of
my
my
wife.
friends. Yeah, a lot of my friends gave up their adult program. They started doing that, and it was like, I'm not. We had a fitness kickboxing. It's great. No, I'm not discounting it. It was just that it's like that wasn't what you gotta wholeheartedly believe in what you're teaching. And the worst thing you can do is go, I guess I got to go to a weekend Krav course because that's what everybody's doing now, and you kind of insert it, but your spirit isn't there. So I think it's a great analogy, and not try to make something that's not. I think what's also interesting, because I have great deal of respect. I know so many really high caliber karate and taekwondo guys, right? That don't know how to do jiu-jitsu and they don't know Muay Thai, but they're still badasses. But the difference is back in the day, and I know that you're an old school Olympic Taekwondo fighter versus the newer version. I know you and I have had that talk a little bit, right? Is that back in the day, like when I was competing in sport karate, there were a lot of it was bare knuckle initially, and I'm not saying back in the day, the guys nowadays are better, but there was a lot of tough guys, right?
Oh yeah.
Lots of them, and all the guys that were doing MMA now or jujitsu, that's what they were doing because that was available. And there's still a lot of really tough guys doing traditional martial arts. But the
Bill
difference,
Wallace.
I think, is, you don't have to be, meaning that it's very easy. There's a lot of guys that can hide behind their belt, and you don't see that in the more progressive arts. Like if you're running a jiu-jitsu school, chances are you're training with your team. You're probably a little more
100%.
fit. And the other thing that breaks my heart is when I see guys that like really high level martial arts practitioners, and I'm going to pick on like taekwondo guys initially, that were great kickers that never bothered to develop the rest of their body very well as far as their skills, and then their hip goes out, their knee goes bad, and now they got nothing because they'd really
Yeah.
focused on that one aspect versus kind of trying to be more well-rounded.
I think that's 100% right. And there's one of the things that I like about being in the music lesson business versus the martial arts business. So I have to say this, and if Paul Rose watches this, he's gonna laugh, because the number of times that I said I wish we could just walk into a martial arts school and like challenge the master, beat him up, and take his students, because that would be a way better like growth strategy for us. But that was always in my heart.
That's a joke, everyone. That's a joke, by
That's
the
a
way.
joke. Yeah. I never.
Yeah.
I'm not naming names of where we wanted to go, but Paul knows exactly what I'm talking about. But but it was always in my heart that the person you're learning from ought to be able to do it and not hide behind their belt. And one of the draws for me to jiu-jitsu was that everybody rolled, and like you knew the coach could tap you out. And I really appreciate that about jiu-jitsu, but even more so in music. Because in music, there's no hiding your inability.
Wow. Right. Okay.
And so, I mean, you can tell immediately when someone plays and sings or does their thing, whether they can do it or not and how well. And I love that is the case in music.
So talk to me. I love that. I can see that totally, wholeheartedly, because you can either you do it or don't. If you're demonstrating some riff or something, you got to be able to do it or you can't do it. So it's right there.
Yeah.
So tell me what you've learned or uniquely about, or what can martial arts schools, because most of the people listening to this are martial artists or run martial arts schools. What can we learn for what you've learned from the transition from martial arts to the music business?
There's two things that stood out for me immediately. The first was that I walked on the mat when I was 7 years old, never stepped off again. And I never realized in all that time how much undercurrent of fear there was. So I don't know about as the teacher watching the class, I always have this undercurrent of like, crap, can't let anybody get hurt. Oh, don't step on that guy. Oh, like that's too hard.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
and I always have this low grade fear that somebody's going to get hurt on my watch. You're nodding your head and smiling if people are
Yeah,
listening. Like,
of course.
you look at the new guy
And
coming
you
in.
better have that, by the way, or you're gonna, or it's, or you're asking for it. But anyway, go ahead. So the new guy's
Yeah.
coming in.
New guy comes in and he's afraid he's going to get hurt, right? You get the kid the first time they go into the adult class, afraid that they're going to get hurt. The adult ought to be afraid they're going to hurt the kid. And there's a need to be mindful of your self-preservation that creates a low grade of fear, I think, all the time in the martial arts classroom. And I never noticed it was there until I taught group music classes and was like, why does this feel so easy? And I realized, I'm not worried anybody's going to get hurt. I'm not worried I'm going to get hurt. I mentioned Métis, my Muay Thai instructor. The worst injury he ever had was when he was coaching and somebody backed into him and stepped on him and tore his knee up. So I think it's useful for martial arts school owners to appreciate the heightened tension that
I'm going to use a little transformational vocabulary. I'm going to call it awareness versus fear, just because I get what you're saying, 100%, 100%. But I told you, you have to have that heightened awareness and concern. And I guess the word fear fits. I just don't like using that word, so I'm replacing it with
Okay. Well, I think at least when you take that person who's walking in for the first time, until you can use transformational language on them, I think we need to appreciate how ill at ease they may be walking onto the mat, and that may not go away for years.
Right.
I remember
was just trained this morning, and I did a half-hour round with a guy, and I'm concerned the whole time about making sure I come out of that one piece. Literally, I'm kind of sweaty now. It's real. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't tell you what to do about it exactly. You know what I mean? I can't say, so you because this exists, you must.
Yeah.
But I think you have to think about what that might mean for you, because I never noticed how present it was until it wasn't there.
So how have you, switching gears here, it's a great point. How have you, what did you apply from the martial arts worlds to your music studio? Did you apply a belt system or a message of the week?
Right.
How did you take the stuff that, because certainly, having a small business where you're teaching, there's so many similarities, but there's some unique stuff to martial arts that it does. Were you able to take any of that and apply it to your music business?
Probably the one irreplaceable thing that martial arts has is that belt system. So everyone understands belts. Everybody understands black belts. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. Yeah. And so you can start a music school and you can say, we're doing colored guitar straps and you got to earn your black guitar strap. It will never have the cachet of the black belt. It will never mean as much. And so I think one of the biggest things that martial arts schools have over every other lesson business is that belt system. If the classes are good, we talked about the 3 things that make a lesson business work. I don't have to tell you, people will hang on until they get that black belt. There's a lot of retention that comes from just like the boost of getting a stripe, the boost of getting a belt, but also the long-term pull of making it to that goalpost. And so I think that, again, I can't tell you exactly what you ought to do with that information, but maybe just be appreciative of
I love it.
How great a system that is.
What have you been able to apply? Have you tried to do like a striped guitar, not worth, a tip?
Yes.
Life skills. Have you put anything like that in there at all?
I 100% tried to do like a belt system with guitar. Mixed success, like some people cared and some people didn't. But I think what is important for non-martial arts businesses to understand about that is you have to help students perceive their progress. This is one of the things jiu-jitsu sometimes suffers from, because it can be so long before you get a stripe or whatever. But you know, very often students don't understand that they're getting better. And I think, if I may be so bold, I've been a teacher long enough now to recognize that a lot of times people get worse to get better. You know, you got something you're doing, it's kind of working, but it's inhibiting your ability to grow beyond it. So we have to get rid of that. And once we take that out of your game, you get a little worse. You'll give up a few more points, you get hit a few more times, you're not scoring as much while we fix your footwork or whatever it might be. But we need to break you down to build you up. And while you're being broken down, you feel like you're getting worse. And it's really hard to get that retention aspect of the three things when people are feeling like they're getting worse. So helping people understand that no matter what's going on today on the mat or today in the classroom or today with your instrument, you are getting better. Mm-hmm. And the belts are a really powerful tool for that. Like, but one way or another, you got to do it.
So how have you tried to tie in? Obviously, you don't need someone to tell you the importance of courtesy. It's more, I mean, it's nice to have someone tell you that. It's more by the example that people give, that people learn it. But, you know, what makes martial arts unique is because we're really obligated to teach respect, courtesy, self-control, because we're teaching people to hurt people, right? And so there's so many life lessons come along with that. And I know that, man, if I send my son to you and he, you know, he doesn't want to practice the guitar, but he does anyway, and he plays for years and he gets really good. There are so many lessons in that are comparable, right?
Yep.
But so how have you consciously, like, you know, you had a very tight in, like, a message of the week when you're running your martial arts school. Is that what, have you used any of that stuff in your music business?
Yeah. So the first thing we did was just take the messages of the week from the martial arts school and cross out martial arts and insert music, literally. As time went on, I think one of the things that I recognized that I really liked was that you mentioned, because we teach violence, maybe that's not the word we want to use, but we teach people to hurt each other. We must teach respect and compassion and these other things. There are necessary values that good people need to foster if they're going to participate in this activity. The same is actually true with music. It's just different values. So you might, I'll tell you one that I think music has on martial arts in spades is vulnerability. You know, good musicians are
putting themselves out there, man. They're putting themselves out there. Yeah.
Here's my problems. Here's what my dad did when I was a kid. Here's the reason that my lover left me. You know, like all these things, here's what I feel. And we're putting that out there. And if you don't have that in the music, it's not good music, right?
And so for an artist to be good at that, they've got to put their spirit into it. It can't just be the words. So they're vulnerable because I've never thought of that. That makes total sense.
Yeah. So there's two aspects to vulnerability, right? Because I have to be vulnerable when it's appropriate and know how to do that. But I also can't be so vulnerable that I'm a walking victim all the time. So teaching people to express that vulnerability and still remain strong people is interesting. You can also really address, like, humility in a great way. And martial artists need it too. But there's something about being on a stage with everyone in the room looking at you. By the way, it's a weird thing to want. Like, oh, there's 100 people in this room. You should all watch what I can do. Like, that's a strange, like, thing to think. Right. And so anybody who has that inclination should probably be taught some lessons on humility.
Right. No, I like it.
Self-awareness. So you know, there are many things in common. Like, you got to be disciplined. You got to be focused. You've got to be, you got to persevere. You know, you got to love repetition. Like, there's so many things that are similar. But there are some interesting things that I think are unique to each endeavor.
Very cool, man. So if you were, what advice, you started, 35, 36 years ago, you started your martial arts training, you opened up your school. 20 years ago, you had it for, the better part of 20 years. And if you're talking to, and what you've learned from your last 5, 7 years, has it been 7 years you've been doing music now? I mean, you've been doing music longer than that, but
Yeah,
actually
a
teaching?
while.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, a
So,
few.
what would you tell a martial arts school owner, from all your experience? All right, man, here's what I would tell you. Here's where I would put my focus. I'm just getting ready to open up my first school. I love martial arts. I'm really excited about it. I'm willing to do whatever. What would you tell me?
I mean, it's
You could go through the 3 points. Share the 3 points again, because I think
yeah, I know, like, I hope that this is well received. Um, but I would, whenever anybody now asks me, should I start my own business of any kind, I say no. Because
it's hard.
if you have any doubt, it's not for you. And I think what I've learned about business in general and martial arts schools specifically is you've got to do that because that's in your heart of hearts, that's the only thing you can do.
Okay.
I look at all the effort that I put into building my martial arts business, and I think, man, if I had done this as a real estate agent or as building an app, if I had put all that effort in there, I would have made more money. So did I waste my life because I didn't make as much money as I would have in another industry? Well, no, because when I was a martial arts school owner, that was the only thing my heart would let me do.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is a musician's vulnerable answer, but I would say the only reason, not that you can't make a lot of money. We did, but it's never like you're never going to make, like, you'll always make more money somewhere else. It's not about the money. And it's got to be because you love it so much that you can't see yourself doing anything else.
I think it's so great advice. And by the way, the only way you're going to make any money is if that's the rule right there. Because if you lack that, it's never going to happen.
Isn't that the thing?
Yeah. You can't do it for that reason. But if you want that to be the reason, you better love it. I love it. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with me, man. It's good to get caught up. I know we don't talk as often as we used to, and I wish you the best of success. If someone
I'll call you every day, sir.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to reach out, we'll put your. I'll make sure to. So, is there give us your website for your business.
Yeah, so they can go to danielvigillessons.com and phone numbers there. And yeah, I'm happy to. I've always been happy to talk to anybody. I think I know lots of stuff.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being on the line, and thanks for tuning in. And I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you, sir. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you for tuning in today to our podcast. I hope you found it valuable and inspirational. To stay connected, please subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you go for your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's show, please give us a 5-star review. And we really sincerely would appreciate some feedback. Your feedback helps us to create high-quality content that will help others in the future. If you'd like to follow me, you can go to Dave Kovar on Facebook or Haunchi Dave Kovar on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next episode.